How's it going, guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to install Zippy spacers in your BRS Replicant. You can see I've already installed the bite handle spacer, so together we'll install the safe handle spacer. You can see I'm installing the half-length extensions, but the procedure is going to be pretty much identical for the full-length extensions as well as the flush spacers. So to start, I'll take a T8 and begin unscrewing the spacer body screws. As your sex bolt spins, you can either add a little pressure with your finger, or you can torque the scales, rotate them relative to one another. So like one scale this way, one scale that way. But mine are coming undone pretty easily, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to then take a thin rigid object, in this case a 1.5 millimeter hex key, to simply push out the sex bolts and remove the stock spacer. So now I'll show you how to adjust the weight in the half-length extension as well as the flush spacer. There's 3 slots to insert tungsten weights, and the easiest way to do it is if you have the tip of a clicky pen, you can just push them in, but any rigid object will work, and if you're strong enough you can even just use your finger. So this can hold up to 3 weights, just like that. The full-length extension can actually hold 2 weights in this middle section, as well as an additional 4 in the extension. Now, the only time you're ever really going to want to use all 6 weights is if you have a super light liner and scale setup and a heavy blade such as the stock Tonto. When I'm using the stock G10 scales with a Tonto blade, I usually go for 2 or 3 tungsten balls in the extension, and then in order to remove the weights you would insert a thin rigid metal object, in this case this pick from a gun cleaning kit, and just gently but firmly pop the weights out. But I'm going to install the half-length extension, and my preferred balance with the half-length extensions are 2 weights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the half-length extension and insert it in the handles, push it against, and I'm actually going to use this opportunity to install the body screw inlays. In this case, it's just for cosmetics. I'm using them to mark the bite handle, but you don't have to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert 1 sex bolt, and then I'm going to make sure everything's lined up. I'll probably have to push the spacer in and push down on the table at the same time. It might require a little wiggling to kind of line everything up, but I've just pushed it in. You can see it's pushed in properly, and I'm going to repeat that with the next sex bolt. And again, this might require some wiggling. Make sure you're applying pressure, pushing the spacer in. Make sure you have a nice tight lockup, and that's in. And I'll just tighten these to a light resistance. As I was saying, there's 2 ways to correctly tighten the spacers. Well, 3 ways. You could just tighten the top screw to a light resistance and then tighten the bottom screw to a medium resistance, visually inspect the handles to ensure the slabs are parallel and call it a day. I like to be a little more precise. So the first way, the easiest way I recommend, is to take your stock screw and fit it in flush like this inside the channel against the Zippy spacer, and then we're just going to tighten the bottommost screw and then tighten the top screw, and we're just going to repeat this procedure until I can feel the spacer catching on the handles. And here it's catching on the handles, so I'm going to try to tighten the bottommost screw, see if that loosens it up. Nope. So now I'm just going to loosen the top screw, and there's friction, but I can pull it out. So I would then visually inspect the slabs, the liners, and scale to make sure everything looks parallel. And I would probably put the blade in there too, use that as a visual aid. This method will work. The one thing I do want to mention though is there's variation in the bushing washer blade stack. So you can see mine measures in at 4.05 millimeters, but a stock spacer is 3.93 millimeters. It's a little bit thinner than the bushing stack. This might not be the case for yours. There's variations in machining, but what I like to do is I like to have the bushing washer blade stack be the exact same width as the spacer, so that the slabs can be perfectly parallel along the length of the channel. And this isn't always able to be accomplished with the stock spacers or using the stock spacers as a guide. So if you have calipers, this is where they'll come in handy. I'm going to zero mine. They're already zeroed. Perfect. And I'm going to just take a couple measurements. Bushing washer stack seems to hover around 4.05. Let's measure the other side. 4.02, 4.03. So really my target right now is going to be about 4.05. And so now I'm going to repeat these measurements here. You can see the slabs, the channel width reflects the stock spacer really well because that's the aid I used, but it's a bit too thin. Relative to the bushing stack. So you can see the variation is caused by some bowing. So we're going to fix that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up this bottommost screw. And I'm going to loosen up the top screw. I really want the top screw to read 4.05. So that's good. Now the top screw reads 4.05, 4.05. So I actually got a little lucky and I just kind of got it on the first try. But you might need to tighten and loosen the top or bottom screw relative to each other, because if you tighten the top screw, it kind of makes the slab want to do this. And if you tighten the bottom screw, it kind of makes the slab want to do that. And so it might require a few iterations of tightening, loosening, tightening, loosening. It only takes a few minutes, and it's really not that hard, but I'm happy with that. So what I'm gonna do, this Replicant has a perfect tune on it, so I'm able to use that to test just how parallel the slabs are, and I'm gonna see. So I've got no wiggle at all, and a free handle swing, and the same thing on the other handle. No wiggle, free handle swing. That's a perfect tune. It is much easier to tighten to the correct thickness if you have a perfect tune, because you know if your tune's off by a little bit, you need to tighten or loosen a screw. But that is how you install the Zippy spacers. And that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys.